So now we're going to look at concepts that are linked to Rububiyyah. So Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So other concepts that are linked to Rububiyyah, such as the giving of life and death, the granting of provision, resurrecting, causing harm and benefit, and so on. So Ar-Rabb, the Lord, is the one who initiates and repeats. Allah says in Surah Al-Rum, verse 27, and it is He who begins creation, then repeats it. Ar-Rabb is the one who gives life and causes death, as Allah says, and there is no deity except Him. He gives life and causes death. He is your Lord and your Lord of your first forefathers. And Allah says in Surah Al-Mulk, verse 2, He who created death and life to test you as to which of you is best indeed. Harm and benefit are in the hands of Allah, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and when we give the people a taste of mercy after adversity has touched them, at once they conspired against our verses. And in Surah Al-Fath, verse 11, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then who could prevent Allah at all if He intended for you harm or intended for you benefit? And provision is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inevitably. So in Surah Al-Kabut, verse 17, indeed those who worship besides Allah do not possess for you the power of provision. So seek from Allah provision and worship Him and be grateful to Him. To Him you will be returned. And He, Azza wa Jal, says, Allah extends provision for whom He wills and restricts it. Surah Al-Rad, verse 26. And Allah is a bestower and withholder. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Fatir, verse 2, whatever Allah grants to the people of mercy, none can withhold it, and whatever He withholds, none can release it thereafter. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, this was narrated in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, O Allah, none can withhold what you give and none can give what you withhold. Other matters connected to Allah being Ar-Rabb, the Lord, include the granting of victory and the guiding of people's hearts. And Allah says, and the victory is not except from Allah, the exalted in might and wise. And this is mentioned in Surah Al-Imran, verse 126. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you have not besides Allah any protector or any helper. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 107, this is mentioned. And Allah says regarding guidance, indeed, O Muhammad, you do not guide whom you like, but Allah guides whom He wills, and He is more knowing of the rightly guided. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas, verse 56, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Arif, verse 178, and whoever Allah guides He is the rightly guided. As you can see, all of these concepts are connected to the concept of Allah's Rububiyyah, Lordship, and these concepts can be understood so we can affirm the true servitude to Allah and affirm that He is the only one that is deserving of such servitude. So moving on, that believing in the oneness of Lordship, Tawheed and Rububiyyah implies belief in the oneness of divinity and worship in Allah alone, Tawheed and Ulohiyyah. So believing in the oneness of Allah, Tawheed and Rububiyyah, believing in that then affirms the belief in the oneness of divinity and worship in Allah alone. So you'll find that Allah has ordained that believing in Him as the only Lord is the reason why we believe that He alone is deserving of our servitude and that we should worship only Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Lord of the heavens and the earth and whatever is between them, so worship Him and have patience for His worship. Do you know of any similarity to Him? This is mentioned in Surah Maryam, verse 65. In other words, He alone is deserving of worship because He is the creator of the heavens and the earth and everything between them. And Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 21, O man, can worship your Lord who created you and those before you, that you may become righteous or you may have taqwa. In other words, worship Him alone because He is the creator. And Allah Azza wa Jal says, indeed those you worship besides Allah do not possess for you the power of provision. So seek from Allah provision and worship Him and be grateful to Him. To Him you will be returned. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Kabut, verse 17. So is Allah Azza wa Jalla has made the fact that He is the one who possesses the power of provision and the reason why He alone is deserving of worship, because He has the power to provide provision in your life. So the disbelievers and the polytheists affirm the oneness of Lordship. So, do the disbelievers affirm the oneness of Lordship? And the answer to this is all of creation affirm the oneness of Lordship. Even the disbelievers and the polytheists affirm the oneness of Lordship. There's a great deal of evidence for this. So in Surah Luqman verse 25, Allah says, and if we ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they surely say Allah. The second verse is the verse in which Allah says, say in whose hand is the realm of all things, and He protects while none can protect against Him. If you should know, they will say all belongs to Allah. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Mu'min, Noon, verse 88 and 89. And the last evidence for this is where Allah tells us how Iblis affirmed the Lordship of Allah. He said in Surah Al-Hijr, verse 39, Iblis said, my Lord, because you have put me in error. I'll leave you here. Fi amanillah. Wa sallallahu wa baraka ala nabina Muhammad. Astaghfirullah. Catch you in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.